Hello there, my name is Lamin Jai. This is News Review. Thank you for joining us on the show today. Coming up for you, police today held a press conference after their officers seized a large quantity of cannabis at a compound. Also, the voter registration has been underway. We find out the level of participation of Gambians in this year's election. But today, my guest will be the deputy spokesman of the Gambia Armed Forces, Captain Malik Sanyang. He will talk to me there about the new operation launched there by the army. But let's see what the newspapers are saying. We will begin with that. The Standard, we'll start with the Standard. The army gives details on Operation Restore Sanity. That's their lead story there. Well, we have the deputy spokesman. He will talk to us on that. Vancouver tourist trial set for judgment. ITFC signs $250 million agreement to support Gambia. Army denies making arrest in Senegal. Gambian family of Grenfell fire victims demands justice. Let's see quickly on the Standard there, reporting that the International Islamic Trade Finance Corporation, a member of the Islamic Development Bank Group, has signed a new 5-year framework agreement in support or in favor of the government of the Gambia that targets to provide up to $50 million to the country on an annual basis. Yankuwa Ture trial set for judgment. Justice Ibrahim Ajete of the High Court in Banjul has adjourned the murder trial involving the state against Yankuwa Ture, former AFPRC junta member and minister, to 14th July 2021 for judgment. So D-Day is looming and looming large in the case of Yankuwa Ture. There will be judgment. He will learn his fate next month on the 14th. Army is denying that the claims that Gambian forces entered Senegal some 2 weeks ago. Took two people and brought them to Farafenni. So the army is dismissing that. There isn't much on the Standard there. Let's see the point. States Council urges court to convict Yankuwa Ture. So that's their lead story there. They're also reporting on Yankuwa Ture there. It is the State Council that is urging the court to convict him. 3 minors, others arrested for drug trafficking. Gambia grapples with poverty as 33% of rural households get 1 meal a day. Let's see that story there. Falai C.K. Balde, an international consultant who is assigned with the National Food System Survey, yesterday revealed that data collected indicated that food insecurity is on the increase in the Gambia or in rural areas, as 33% of the rural households enjoy not more than 1 meal per day. That is also another story of 3 minors, others arrested for drug trafficking. As part of the regional operational plan to curb illicit drug trafficking and related activities within the West Coast region, operatives of the Drug Law Enforcement Agency have apprehended 4 suspects, including minors, at diverse places for being in possession of prohibited drugs for the purpose of trafficking there. Yes, let's take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. There, police today held a news conference after their officers seized a large amount of cannabis at a compound. Mudibangam reports.
Gambia Police Force's Public Relations Officer, Superintendent Lamin Jai, invited reporters to a press conference at the Police Intervention Unit headquarters in Kanifing. Among those present were the Commissioner of the Police Intervention Unit, the Commander of the Operation Zero Crime Night Patrol Team, and police officials. According to Superintendent Jai, it was during their regular daytime patrols that they were tipped off by a member of the general public on suspected criminal activities occurring in a household in the village of Banyaka, West Coast region.
We always tell the public that the Gambia Police Force has patrol units that patrol during the day, in the evening, at night, even early in the morning. And so it was one of the routine patrols that they were doing yesterday when they got tip-off information that some illicit activities are going on around the village of Banyaka, somewhere around Brufut, West Coast region area. And so as a result of that, they have decided to go and investigate into this situation. And during the course of that investigation, in fact, they realized that it was some cannabis dealing that was going on around this area. And so eventually they were able to follow leads until they uncover that metal bunker you have seen out there with quantities of cannabis that you have 4 bags of cannabis with 29 bundles within those 4 bags that were hidden in that bunker in one of the compounds in Banyaka. Arrests were made. Some 2 individuals were arrested in connection to this situation, and they are currently helping with investigations. What we will do afterwards is to transfer this case to the Drug Law Enforcement Agency, because they are the institution that is responsible to further probe into this situation and be able to take appropriate actions against these individuals and their activities. As at now, we have message that we want to pass to the general public, and especially to do with one, information sharing. We want the general public to share information with the police, because we cannot be able to uncover some of these situations without people sharing information with the police. In fact, we want to commend the public because this information was shared by a member of the public, and that was why the police were able to investigate and uncover this situation. Secondly, we want people also to not obstruct our officers when they go about with their search activities, especially when they have informations like this. Oftentimes, we usually will encounter people coming out to obstruct officers, barring them from entering certain premises, even though they have genuine information to investigate. And so we want to let people understand that it is against the laws of the Gambia to obstruct police officers when they are on their lawful duties. So this is what we want to share with the public, so that at the end of the day, we all together should be able to get the Operation Zero Crime objective a reality. Even if we are not able to zero crime, but we should be able to minimize it to the barest minimum. So this is what message we want to put across for today.
We want to thank the community for sharing those very important intelligence to us, because we cannot be everywhere. We cannot know what is happening around in the compounds and in the neighborhood, in the communities. We therefore ask the community, the people living with these people around, to give us relevant information so that we can fight these crimes together. Drug, we all know, is very, very bad. Drug can lead people into doing so many criminal activities. So the fight against drugs should be everybody's business. We, as PIU, since the commencement of the operation, we have been very, very active both day and night. We have our people patrolling all over. That alone cannot solve this problem. We can be patrolling in the street, not knowing what is happening in the houses. But if people come out and give us those relevant information, we'll be able to work on those intelligence and see if we'll be able to control the crime that is happening around us.
The landlord of the compound in which the cannabis was discovered has been arrested and is currently helping the police with their investigation. 2 other alleged culprits, male, are still at large. Superintendent Jai urged the members of the public not to hesitate to come forward with any relevant information pertaining to criminal activities being conducted in their households, neighborhoods, and communities. The Gambia Police
Welcome back. So voter registration has commenced across the length and breadth of the country, with thousands and thousands of Gambians going to various registration centers across the country to register. But how is the issue of Gambians' interest in participating in this year's election like? More in this by Usman Jat.
Of June exactly marks 2 weeks since the start of the 2021 voter registration exercise by the Independent Electoral Commission. Since the start of the voter registration exercise, people across the length and breadth of the Gambia have been coming out to take part in the voter registration exercise. However, with 15 political parties already registered at the IEC, most Gambians do not seem to be convinced to take part in the 2021 presidential election. Today we are out and about to know how prepared people are when it comes to taking part in the 2021 presidential elections.
Waaye li problème Gambia suñu politique bi dafa fone trop waaw politique bi dafa fone because man dama fone gars yi xamoon na interest réew bi la wala lan la parce que Gambia is a small country waaw maa ngi dégg xamoon na leer na ma ñu ne xam 18 or 19 lañu am political party so loolu laa xamoon man loolu am ban njëriñ la am loolu dafa confuse loo doomi réew yi doo xam kan ngay sànnil carte bi ko kenn ku nekk su waxee jàngakat li da nga foog ne kii moo gën a keneen so 19 people a small country ñooñu suñ bokkoon nekk tout doole fukki nit ak ñeneent 19 power suñ mbooloo mu nekk 2 power.
so dafa mel ni fu mu nekk nii yow xamuloo koy votal probable actually.
non fu mu nekk nii def to be honest maa ngi xoolangum because maa ngi bëgg a déglu ñoom ñëpp seen agenda ma xool maa ngi déglu am na sama voters card maa ngi déglu waaw waaye li ma gën a la woon su fekkee 19 yooyu noonu mun nañ join ñu nekk ñaari parti dafa powerful trop liggéey ba xëjul si réew mi.
man dama vote pour changes ñu léegi ñu jox try chance ñu jox ko xale yu ndaw ndax ñooñu tam ñu mun a def dara because spy moom gis nañ ne ñoom moom mënuñoo yóbbu dëkk bi yaa ngi understand because 2016 election bi dañ wax lu bari loo xamante ne defuñ ko yaa ngi understand so this time around dañ need youth si génn ñu votal youth si ndax ñu mun a gis changes tam ñu jox gars yi chance sanga so su mu joxul gars yi chance du mun a xam ñoo mun a yóbbu dëkk bi so we need they need changes they need changes because gis nga depuis 2016 ba léegi mënuma liggéey mënuma job ba pare maa ngi am family man leen yaakaar ba pare mënuma job ba léegi maa ngi toog man maa ngi industry side for it nag they need changes.
loolu moom dëgg la parce que 2021 election moom daanaka jege si na mun nañu wax décembre la not so ut nañ suñu voters card ba pare léegi parce que yéen nag sànni carte because ñu sànni carte tamit leneen rek la pour élection bi xam nga ni ki da nga xool sa choice waaye comme aw ma choice wala soo sànni lekk kii di win non mentalité boobu la war a génne suñu xel yi ñun as a Gambien ko élection comme son go ñun Gambien ñu fi des xam nga soo gisee ne comme government mu roulé féeboo la am nga sa parti sa sànnil ko rek yow vote is your right boobu nga am na taxaw si media nga wax waaye soo bëggee wax te sànni loo carte amul benn njëriñ useless noonu laa ko gisee daal moo tax man dama fas yéene sànni carte su ma ko fekkee ak jàmm ak salaam.
political parties bi dañoo bëri trop te loolu demalu dara si réew te tamit li ñuy ñaan mooy na ci nit ñi demee ak yar waaw saaga bu ci amul rek xaste amul ci rek dina mën a jàll ak jàmm ak salaam.
yow foo nekk nii ban political party di nga pare nga pour sànni carte.
Of course, because pare naa pour sànni carte because I am a citizen te dama war a sànni carte loolu moom right la pour citizen mu nekk war a sànni carte waaye nañ ko def ci yar ak tey ñu bañ a saaga kenn bañ a xas kenn bu saaga amul rek dina romb ak jàmm ak salaam waaye bu saaga amee rek nit ñi di commencé provoque rek problème moo ici te loolu du yemal réew mi kam moo tax adduna bi ñu développe ñëpp soo demee adduna yi ñu développe ci réew yu mag yëpp ñaari political party ñett moo fa dee nekk mooy from America ba South Africa ba yeneen dëkk yu mag yëpp.
The 2021 presidential elections is predicted to be a very tight one, with 18 political parties already registered at the Independent Electoral Commission (IEC). Coupled with the increasing crime rates, price hikes, Gambians have a huge decision to make as to whom they want to elect for the next 5 years. However, any party that wants to win the race to the State House must put the interests of of the people first. Reporting for the Fatu Network News Review,
Africa Global presents the new Tulip Gardens. Tough Tulip Gardens is set to comprise service plots in sizes ranging from 220 to 570 meters square. Deposit as low as $83,600 is only an 18-month interest-free payment plan with only 20% deposit on the service plots. Please contact 376-2333 or 776-2333. Tough Africa.
Welcome back. So the Army over the weekend announced a new operation, an operation that is codenamed Operation Restore Sanity. This is to help complement the police in the fight against crime. But what is this operation all about? We understand it is the National Guard that is going to be on the streets. But this is why the deputy spokesman of the Army, Captain Malik Sanyang, joins me to explain to us really how it's all going to look like. Cap, thank you very much for coming.
It's a pleasure to be here, Larry.
Great. I think this is your first time of being on News Review. But thank you. Tell us this operation, how did it come about?
Well, you could remember that there was a presidential declaration, and this was on the 24th of May. And inside that declaration, there was a mention of the possible deployment of the National Guards if the situation vis-a-vis crimes in the country does not abate, does not seem to go down. And that informed actually the preparation that culminated to this operation called Operation Restore Sanity, involving the National Guards. So that's a brief history as far as this particular operation goes.
When it comes to, in respect to the presidential declaration, the president was ordering the army to be on standby. Now the army has gone further to the issue of deployment. So is it the commander-in-chief that asked you to be on the streets? Because in his speech he only said he was ordering you to be on standby.
I'm very happy that you decided to bring that point up. There is no such thing like a confusion in this. First, you made mention of the army. It is not actually the army. It is the National Guard.
That is part of the army. The National Guard is a unit within the army.
Let me break it further.
Okay.
Let me break it further for our viewers out there so that there are no misconceptions. Actually, the Gambia Armed Forces has under it the Republican National Guards, the Gambian National Army, and the Gambian Navy, and an Air Force that is at its infancy.
Yes.
So the National Guards and the responsibilities of the National Army are somewhat similar but different.
Yes.
It is that component called the National Guards that have the full police powers and limited military powers. That is to say, they are mandated to perform tasks such as those that are very, very common with the police.
Yes.
So what it also means is they have limited military functions. So if anything, they form as a buffer, a cushion between the regular and pure National Army function, which involves the infantry mainly, and that of the police. Should in case the police feel they are a little bit overwhelmed, so it becomes very natural for them to seamlessly step in. As far as executing their responsibilities are concerned, when it comes to maintaining the safety and security of the Gambian citizenry.
Yes, and in your announcement, the Operation Restore Sanity, but how is the National Guard going to work with the police? Because the police has the lead role when it comes to internal security. How is that going to play out?
It is already playing out. It is already playing out in the sense that the police started off with an operation called Zero Crime. And followers would recall that I have been present from the maiden press conference in terms of updating people to some of the achievements of that operation so many times. And what that tells you is we have been in close coordination. However, it may not be enough for the police to cover every nook and cranny of this country. And we do not want to wait, to a point where we will be overwhelmed. So it will become very much timely to actually take up the responsibility and actually get to some of those places that are rare to reach, probably by the police, and also in close coordination. It is very important for people to understand that we are not working in isolation. We are working in unison, and then we are definitely cooperating, and then we are understanding each other as far as achieving the common aim of this operation goes.
And Kak, there is this other thing, because I also found that a little curious. Before the announcement on Sunday, announcement of this operation on Sunday, the National Guard was already out in the streets. I myself met them at a checkpoint maybe a week or so ago, well before this announcement came. So how did that happen? The issue of the National Guard already on the streets, but the announcement coming way later.
Like I alluded to before, there are operational priorities and there are operational objectives that you want to achieve at the end of the day. So in as much as information is very, very key, so you need to strike a very sensible balance in between. Actually, they were deployed on Friday, as showed on the press release. But then actually the announcement came, like you write, on Sunday. But what led to that is what I just alluded to. We had to balance between actually not over, spreading the information out there. At the end of the day, it will defeat the main purpose. But also, you said you met them a week before.
Yes.
That must have been prior to the announcement and the whole activity itself. They must have just been performing their regular functions, like I said. They already have those powers with them. So this operation is, if you like, is a question of saying we are revamping our presence.
So, how many men and women are involved? How many men and women of the National Guard are actually involved? Who are these? Who are their leaders? Who are their commanders? These are people who will be asking these questions.
Yes, that is right. But I think what is much more pertinent at this point, and what is much more important at this point, is making sure that the level of crime is curtailed, and that there is that normalcy. We've seen outcry all over the media regarding theft cases and a lot of other like issues. So it comes to this. Am I just interested in knowing those that are involved and the number that is involved? What do you need some of those information for actually? So for operational security, and then to make sure that there is that operational issue surrounding making sure that criminals out there don't use that information against them. It will be ill-advised to actually bring some of those things
but when
out.
it comes to your numbers, there is no harm in that. For example, when the Capitol riots happened in US,
yes,
the US military came out to say the National Guard, this is the number of this 1,000 number of National Guard soldiers are what we are sending on the streets.
Absolutely, so, but we are talking about a riot, but yes, we have not yet reached that stage.
Yes.
We have not yet reached that stage,
yes,
like I said. So, the more we escalate, the more some of these things will also be different.
Yes.
But as of now, it will be safe to say that it's just a normal routine now, just a little bit revamped than normal. But I'm not sure we've reached that stage.
I understand it is Lieutenant Colonel Bojang, Omar Bojang, who is their commander.
That's fine, because he's their commander. That's normal. That can easily be said. But when it comes to the actual men that are actually operating on the ground, I think for operational sanctity, I think you guys can also give us that leeway.
Fair enough. And also the photo, some people kind of felt a little scared when they saw the photo you shared. These are heavily equipped group of soldiers with, these assault rifles which have this rocket grenade attached to them. Really, people felt a little scared about that. I want to bring that also to your attention. Why that photo?
Well, put it this way, you are a journalist, so it becomes very natural that wherever you go, you are seen with a mic. They have policing powers. They have somewhat some military powers as well.
Yes.
So this becomes part of their dress code as far as operation concerns. But that is not to say that those weapons are being brandished just to go and then use them on our citizenry. I just want to make that point very, very clear. There is also something called PSYOPs. Criminals see those kind of things. We've seen the incident of the armed robbery case. So now, tell me, if they were just to go out with batons, are you actually sending that psychological message to the criminals to say, well, they are just with batons, they are armed less, so go and attack them? But at least bringing that photo out is going to tell you that these people mean business. So if we're going to continue with armed robbery, we're going to be met with people with higher power. But that is not to say that common sense will not prevail. You would, if our experiences in Darfur are anything to go by, you would understand that we've been having a series of training as regards to international human rights and other related issues. So we are cognizant of all these things, and we've gotten the required level of training as far as that goes in terms of public order management and so forth. So those are weapons to be used as means of a last resort.
Now, let me also ask you, because I find that also a little, I need a clarification on that. That has to, because if the army is working independently of the police in patrolling certain areas that the police might not be able to reach, when you, I mean, the issue of arresting a suspected criminal, if you do that, how are you going to manage that case, that issue of the army arresting somebody that they suspect of being a criminal? Because what we understand, or what is by our laws, it is the police that does arrest, but that does detain people, keep them at their various police stations. When you arrest these people, where are you going to take them? Are you going to hand them over to police? How are you going to go about it?
Yes, it's important. You have to understand that during our patrols also, we have our cameramen with them. Those that will be taking jottings of some of these happenings and then be gathering evidences as well. And what this tells you is, at the end of the day, when they go to the extent of effecting an arrest of a suspected person, eventually the person will now be handed over to the police for the necessary processing, together with all the evidences, and then the police could go further if the person is culpable to go as far as proffering a prosecution against that individual. So this is how it works.
Also, I saw someone, a commentator, write to say, okay, the announcement, the army cannot announce its own deployment. It is the commander-in-chief that should come out and say, okay, the army, I want you deployed. I want you to go to this place. But here is the army announcing its own deployment.
I mean, as far as we are concerned, here we are. What concerns us actually is we are providing security, and we are coming to answer the call by the citizenry to make sure that they move about their normal businesses without fear or ill will. I think if we want to direct fruitful comments, we should be directing it to actually advising our youth folk and other people that are involved in criminality, to making sure that we refocus, we redivert our energy into productive means of work to help us develop as a nation, and this is what actually concerns us.
That's what concerns you. Also, since when you deployed the National Guard, what headway have you made in terms of what are the gains? How did you contribute in bringing crime down in the country? Did you arrest anybody? Can you tell us about it?
Okay, here is the thing. Since the operation started, Lamin, you and I live here. We live in our communities, and we live in our normal societies. And then the mere assurance that those people will be telling you of seeing them out there, and then the underreported case of criminality right now goes a long way in telling you that, okay, these are intangibles, but they are gains. So if anything, I think we are definitely doing a tremendous amount of job in actually making sure that the police leading Operation Zero Crime is actually making an easy headway. And then we are making their job easier because we are beginning to see the fact that the rate of crime has actually subsided.
And people say crime or criminals do not always operate or do not necessarily operate on the highways, because what much since this Operation Zero Crime campaign started, what much has been, I have been going out, I will be out until 3 a.m., 4 a.m. I'll come across a lot of checkpoints, and you have people who say, no, you cannot find these criminals in the highways, in cars. Go to the communities. This is where they are. When it comes to the National Guard, are you aware of this?
We are very much cognizant of this. And then what command has done is to make sure that hotspots are being identified. And those are the hotspots that are actually the bread and butter for the National Guards. That is why earlier on I did not want to go to too much of specifics, but that's why I made mention of the fact that the police certainly will not be able to cover everywhere. By that, their presence can very much be felt within our immediate surroundings. But then those remote areas, those remote corners are definitely what concerns the National Guards. And then if you looked at our press release, it will actually indicate to you that that you should avoid at ungodly hours certain remote places that are criminally infested. So that is just giving you a hint as to what our targets are. So this is exactly the thinking of command as far as this particular operation is concerned.
Now, what measures are in place? Because I mean, these days the issue of human rights rank really high in this country, and there are issues of human rights violations and abuses when you have the military out in the streets. I mean, that is one concern that someone might be out there, someone might want to raise. How is that? How are you going to ensure that, in as much as we want to fight crime, we want to get rid of crime in this country, but then you don't also go about abusing people's rights? Even the police, they say, okay, people should not engage in mob justice. People will arrest people because they stole their items and then beat them up. And the police say, no, this is not right, you cannot do that. So on the part of the military, can you tell us about that? What measures have you put in place?
Yes, I've actually made mention of this to you, that when you look at the GAF, we have been involved in a series of training programs, and more so when it comes to public order. Public order management, involves a lot of technicalities, and then we are seriously cognizant of this fact. And if our DAFO experiences are anything to go by, you will not be able to deploy without actually fulfilling some of those conditions. And then we are glad to say that most of our men and most of our personnel, all of them, in fact, have a training as regards to this.
Yes.
Probably it will just be a question of those that have not actually been deployed in hotspots like that yet.
Yes.
But they've gotten the training already. Probably it's just a question of putting it into practice.
Yes.
But the good thing is the majority, especially the NCOs that are with them, especially the officers that are with them, have been well trained, both nationally and internationally in well-renowned institutions. So we are definitely cognizant of those realities. We will do our best. Our coming out, the aim is not actually to bring and then to come and then bring any kind of abuse on anybody. What we are trying to do is to make sure that we come out there and then restore hope and we restore order and make sure that there is safety, that people are able to participate meaningfully in their daily endeavors towards national growth. So this is actually what our aims are. So in the future, for example, which is highly unlikely, even if it happens, we would apologize in advance because that is not actually the aim at all. Command is very cognizant of this, and then the soldiers are very cognizant of this fact that we are there to provide security, and that is it.
Okay, great. Before I let you go, Cap, I want to bring in Mr. Sariang Marong. He's a security and defense analyst. I think he has something to say. Good evening, Mr. Marong.
Good evening, Mr. Njai and Mr. Sanyang. I've been following the discussion, and I think it's very, very important and very interesting as well. And on the side of Mr. Sanyang, I think all points well taken, and I think we should have this type of discussion to assure the public and the citizens of the role. I mean, as I said always, if Mr. Sanyang leaves at the end of the work, he goes back to his community. He's a father, brother, uncle, or cousin to folks within the community. So I think, Lamin, you mentioned some areas, but I think Mr. Sanyang answered those very, very well. I'm very, very satisfied with the answers.
So let me ask you this then. I mean, you were in the U.S. military. I mean, the issue of deploying the National Guard, I mean, in our climb, we are saying it is because of the rising tide in crime. I mean, what is your assessment? What have you read in terms of this development?
I think even the United States and, the most powerful country, the forces complement each other. I mean, if we look at, for instance, you use the Capitol riot as an example, but the end strength, that's what matters. Like, we have the Capitol Police, we have Secret Service at the Capitol, but despite they had to call the National Guard to complement their efforts. And I think in the Gambia, in its case, the police started Operation Zero, whatever they named the operation with. But because, and these are need-to-know basis, and I think that's what Mr. Sanyang is trying not to go further. The reason why, obviously, the commanders and the commander-in-chief and the National Security Council sat down and assessed their end strength, and they felt that deeply, which comprised of intelligence collection and what they can do to scrub crime rates and everything. That's why they mobilized the National Guard to go out there and complement the efforts of the Gambia Police Force. And these, I understand, people want to know this. Journalists are curious, but sometimes I think to withhold those type of information, sensitive information, is very, very important, and it's key in terms of execution of a successful operation. And I think that's what Mr. Sanyang is saying. So in terms of dress code, getting out there, being the public, well, everywhere, you have a dress code. The weapon is part of your dress code. The vest is part of your dress code. When you get out there, you have to be ready. And that's what he's saying. And I think, and as far as, what is happening in Gambia, we know with the crime rates escalated. We've heard, we heard people saying Gambia is insecure. So now, well, they got Republican guards there. They are trained. Some of them went for peacekeeping missions. So those experiences will always help out to complement the efforts of the police on the ground. So I applaud that, and I applaud the government for coming out with the initiative with all the security.
Mr. Maron?
On the ground.
Mr. Maron, thank you for that insight there. Really appreciate it. So, Cap, you've had Mr. Maron there.
Very well.
So before I let you go, I want to ask you this, because every time this breaks my heart. Really, when I see Senegalese soldiers entering our country, kidnapping people, arresting people, shooting people, disturbing our communities, that breaks my heart. Really, this is something that you don't find anywhere in the world. Yet, Senegalese soldiers will enter our country, they'll cross over into our country, clash with our community members. And you have our army that is tasked to ensure the territorial integrity of this country is intact. I mean, what is the army doing in ensuring that Senegalese don't just get up and then come into our country like that? That doesn't happen anywhere, Piero.
Yes, Lamin, this is a very interesting question, actually. We have seen pockets of incidences of such. But what is important is, I think it's been a while now since the last incident, since such things have happened. We are aware of it, but military is at that operational level. And then you have the strategic level, at the grand strategic level.
Yes.
So it's not just a clear-cut approach to make sure that some of these things are abated. It requires facets of involvement at different levels. So we are cognizant of this fact. We have noted it, and we are doing what we can at our level to be able to make sure that it is curtailed. And this is why I think the incidences, we cannot guarantee that it may not actually happen again, simply because of the nature of our porous borders. When you look at Gambia in terms of, well, I know we are not cartographers, but when you just look at it, look at how we are located, we have very porous borders around, and I don't think the Senegalese army would just come and then pass through where a Gambian military post is. Usually these incidences happen, or they rather tend to occur at places where we don't have a presence or we are very far off. This is where these incidences will happen. So it's just a question of actually looking at ourselves as a country, looking at ourselves as a nation, and then we really look at our how best we can deal with this situation.
Piero, I mean, well, do you have any last thing to say regarding your Operation Restore Sanity?
Yes.
By the way, who coined that? Well, that's just it.
Journalists will always be journalists.
Yeah.
However, my final word to Gambians, is that we are just here to serve you. It's as simple as that. There is no other ulterior motive. There is no other agenda other than to serve you. So what we just require from you is to trust us. Give us your confidence and give us this chance to be able to serve you well and build a better Gambia for us all.
I must say that was a very good interview there. Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you, Captain Malik Sanyang. He's the Deputy Spokesman or the Public Relations Officer of the Gambia Armed Forces, speaking to me there. But before we go, I will bring you an interview that CEO, Fatou Kamara had with a top official recently got a new official added to their board of directors, Mr. Peter J. Pham, Ambassador there. So we'll bring you that interview, which will take us to the end of today's show. Thank you for being there. We'll be back tomorrow. Until then, my name is Lamin.
Ambassador J. Peter Pham is a recognized global authority on Africa. In addition to being a non-executive director of AfriCell, he is a distinguished fellow of the Atlantic Council think tank, where prior to his recent government service, he had been director of the Africa Center and vice president for research and regional initiatives. Between 2021 to 2028, Ambassador Pham was a senior diplomat and policymaker at the U.S. Department of State. He served first as U.S. Special Envoy for the Great Lakes region, encompassing Democratic Republic of Congo, Angola, Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, and Kenya, and then as U.S. Special Envoy for the Sahel with the personal rank of Ambassador, responsible for a regional encompassing not only Burkina Faso, Chad, Mali, Mauritania, and Niger, but also the West African coastal states from Senegal to Cameroon. In these roles, Ambassador Pham was directly mandated by the U.S. Secretary of State to coordinate and implement regional U.S. policy on economic, political, and humanitarian issues. He vows to help AfriCell capitalize on growth opportunities in Africa. AfriCell, founded in 2001 by U.S. entrepreneur Ziad Dallul, is one of the fastest growing mobile telecommunication companies in Africa. The company has launched its first commercial operations in Gambia in 2001. AfriCell has over 12 million subscribers across Africa. Headquartered in London, AfriCell operates in 4 countries: Gambia, Sierra Leone, DRC, and Uganda. Operations in a 5th country, Angola, will be launched this year. Hi, hello, and welcome to this very special interview. And I have Ambassador J. Peter Pham. He is my guest today. I would like to start by welcoming you to the smiling coast of Africa. How do you like the Gambia?
It is as beautiful as I remember it, and the warmth of the people. But also, I'm very impressed and delighted to see the progress since my last visit 2 decades ago.
Wow. So what is the most memorable moment for you? I know you've been here a few days, right? And
Yes.
you're about to wrap up your visit.
Well, certainly, it's great to see the development, the dynamism. But I think the thing that most impresses me on this trip is just the sense of openness and tranquility among the people. I'll be quite honest, during my last trip here 2 decades ago, I found it very difficult to find people who would speak openly and freely with me. And I think we all know why. And
Yes.
it's very much, I think, a very positive development just to see how open people are with a total stranger. So I'm very delighted to see that.
Okay, so you are now going to be in the board of directors for AfriCell, and the AfriCell story actually started here in the Gambia. That was in 2001 when they started their first commercial operations here. And you've been here and you met and interacted with the staff of AfriCell. And when you get inside AfriCell, what was the first impression? What do you think about the staff and how they're going about their work?
Well, I think what really impresses me about AfriCell as a company, which is why I agreed to join the board of directors, is its commitment to Africa and to Africa's people, its commitment to investing in the communities in which it works, and promoting people from within. AfriCell's managing director here in Gambia is Gambian born and raised and very well connected person in this community, very much a part of this community. And I think that ethos of engaging Africa, investing in Africa, believing in Africa's better days are yet to come, very much complements my own great optimism and hope for this continent.
Okay, so you are in the board of directors for AfriCell, and you are such a high-profile person. I read your bio, and I was very, very impressed. I must say congratulations. What is it that you're bringing to AfriCell? Because AfriCell is big out there, and you're also a high-profile person. What do we expect to see you bring to AfriCell?
Well, I think I'd like to bring two things. I like to think I bring my value-added proposition, if you will. One is AfriCell has been in Africa for 2 decades, as you highlighted, starting here in the Gambia. I've been coming to Africa and being engaged here for even longer. So long-standing relationships, appreciation for, belief in the future of this continent and her peoples. I bring that, and I also bring the connection to, AfriCell is an American-owned company. It's the first telecom company in Africa supported by the U.S. Development Finance Corporation. It's also the only American-owned company in this sector. So I think that connection to America and to America's optimism as well and long-standing relationship with Africa.
And you've also had very strong connections and ties to Africa, looking at your profile and everything that you've done for the continent. Why such an interest? One would ask that, because you're not African in the first place.
Well, although I as a very dear friend of mine, Dr. Janetta Cole, longtime director of the National Museum of Africa, always says, we are all Africans, and I take her in that spirit. But no, I've had a long interest since childhood. It started with a fascination with wildlife and but it grew over the years. I've spent here studying, working as a diplomat, as a scholar, to a deep appreciation for the history, the culture, the diversity, and the extraordinary potential of this continent.
Okay, so if you look at telecoms, it is said to be the only thriving industry during the pandemic, the COVID-19. A lot of businesses were closed, but people were home talking on the phone, FaceTime, and that kind of like kept people together, because it was really a very difficult time when people couldn't go out. But looking at it too, some economies in Africa are really, suffering. So do you think with that, do you think telecoms will continue to thrive, or you think at some point it's going to affect it?
No, I think certainly two different things, Fatu. Mm-hmm. First, with respect to the pandemic, its consequences, which have fallen disproportionately on the developing world. Certainly Africa needs support, it needs solidarity, all of that, it needs recovery from all that. But at the same time, Africa holds the keys and should benefit from holding the keys to the future economy of the world. We're moving as a society globally to a greener, more carbon neutral world. That's going to require a lot of natural resources that come from Africa. And Africa should benefit from that contribution to the world economy. As for the telecom sector, certainly it's done well, as you say, during the pandemic, keeping people close together. But it also has a role to play in knitting that closer world in the days to come. We're becoming a knowledge society. Data is more and more important, both in communications, in politics, in economics, and Africa needs more data, more linkages into that global system of the knowledge economy. So I think that the future is very bright for that, and it's only bright for the telecom sector insofar as companies like Africell and others also keep in mind that they're there also as a service provider, as a partner for Africa's development.
Well, yeah, you talked about the use of data in Africa, which is really growing really fast. And the continent is said to have about 1.3 billion people. And I think over 40% of that they subscribe to a cell phone. But there's one issue that always is out there. People discuss it a lot, that the cost of data is expensive and to make phone calls. Do you see an Africa where maybe one day this will go down? Because most people will compare it to Europe and America and say it's easier and cheaper to communicate over there than in Africa. Do you see the cost going down anytime?
I think it will with time. I mean, I take a long view, and it's because perhaps I've worked in Africa for many, many years. I remember when I was first got my start in Africa, the idea of a mobile phone wasn't something you kept in your pocket. It was a thorai. It was this box that you had to carry around, and the cost was prohibitive. It was I pay more for one call than I do now for a month worth of calls here. So if you take that long view, I think you see the cost coming down. You see improvements in service. You see actually Africa in many places leapfrogging technologies. Think of how mobile money has taken off in certain parts of the continent, well ahead of development in even Europe or North America in some places.
Mm-hmm. And now this trip has brought you to Gambia. This is your second time here, and you're going to be visiting other African countries as well. And I'm sure you've been reading a lot about Africa and the leaders that we have. Do you see hope for Africa?
I do. I take the long view, Founder. When I began my career chasing my passion about African politics, security, and development, at that time, literally, you could count with one hand the number of leaders who had stepped down voluntarily. Today, they're much more common. Perhaps not as common as we would like, but it has happened. We're getting there. I mean, literally, with one hand, you could have counted all the presidents who stepped down voluntarily when I began my career. So I think if you look at that long-term view, it's an upward trend. Are there little ups and downs, as always in life? But I think the trend as a whole is very, very positive, and we have to keep an eye on that broader, that strategic view.
Okay. So you're about to leave in the next hour or so. What is it that you would want to say to Gambia and Gambians and the subscribers of Africell? So you can see Africell they have the biggest subscribers in Gambia.
Well, what I'd like to say is I congratulate the people of the Gambia on what you've achieved in the years since I was last here. It's marvelous to see, and it's also marvelous to see that closeness in the society, which I first had a glimpse of and now have a chance to experience, is still very much part. So staying rooted in your traditions and yet reaching out to the future, I think that's, in a way, the Gambia is a miniature story of what Africa is and can be.
Well, Mr. Ambassador J. Peter Pham, I would like to thank you very much for your time and also for visiting my country. I want to wish you a very safe trip.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome.